You're listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cinik.
Welcome everyone to episode 16 of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm your host Cinik, and we have a full house this week. Joining me as always, my good friend Ig, Jules and Kate are here again, and back. This time, hopefully, for a full episode, Ryan from the Gymwits Podcast. This week on the show, we're going to cover BBC and FX's Taboo, and we're going to take a deep dive into HBO's documentary Beware the Slenderman. We are the Cinik Radio Podcast, and we are proud to stand with women everywhere. Well, this week on the show, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about FX's and BBC's Taboo, starring James Hardy. And the basic concept of the show is adventurer James Delaney, long to believe dead, after 10 years returns home to London from Africa in the year 1814 in order to inherit his late father's shipping empire. We open the episode with a very dirty and wet James Delaney on the beach digging something out of the ground. What do you think brought him back, Egg, and what do you think he's digging up?
Well, that's where this all starts to really get to me, because the show is called Taboo, and it seems like even early in this episode that Tom Hardy's character, James Delaney, seems like he's got some kind of connection somewhere that seems unnatural. I think he could be digging up something as simple as money. It could be keys. It could be a will. It could be paperwork. It could be any number of things. Could be an extra set of teeth. I don't know, but hopefully that'll get explained.
I agree. There's a really creepy opening theme song with him floating in, kind of floating in the ocean. It almost looks like he's drowning. Ryan, what did you take from that opening?
Honestly, I was just confused by watching the opening. I think it's, it obviously seems like there's some kind of a supernatural element. I'm sure you could draw some kind of, something from the floating in water, but I was just kind of confused by that intro. Just, I liked it. It was interesting, and it was intriguing, but I couldn't really take anything away from it. Yeah, it kind of reminded
me a little bit of the Westworld intro, a little bit. The music was a little more laid back, and I think it was just a single organ. How about you, Julie?
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Vikings, but that was exactly the same way that Vikings is intro. It's people drowning, and I was actually kind of shocked at how I was like, what am I watching here? Is this Vikings? Did we change the channel? It's the exact same type of intro. Now, I've seen all of Vikings, so I know that it really has nothing to do with the drowning. Obviously Vikings is in water, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything. So I didn't take it too much to heart.
Well, right away, we see a strong cast for the show. We see former Game of Thrones alum, the girl that played Robb Stark's wife. What did you think of the overall casting, Kate?
I thought that, well, first off, Tom Hardy was definitely the perfect role for that, because he does have that ominous kind of rough and ragged and kind of the I'll kill you kind of look that he has to him. So I think they did a really good job casting with that. As far as the other characters, I feel like I'm still trying to get to know them after episode 1, but so far I think that everyone is kind of fitting their role, especially his stepsister. I feel like she's definitely has that like innocent look to her, and
I love the casting for the show so far. I think just every character, every performance is really good. So I definitely think, as far as whether it's casting of the sister, the casting of Tom Hardy, I know we're only discussing episode 1, but I think one of the highlights of the show so far for me, and I guess we're 3 episodes in for the show, is just how well all the characters have been cast, and everybody just sells it well. And even just to extend further, just the world that they've built, you really feel like it's a real lived-in world. So, but yeah, to answer the question, I think I really, really love the casting so far.
Well, here's the thing. Tom Hardy in this role is amazing. And what sold it for me going into this is, if any of you have seen the movie Bronson with Tom Hardy, it was about pretty much one of the most violent criminals ever to exist in modern London, named Charles Bronson. Coincidentally enough, he in that movie is very similar in his intensity, and that intensity sells very well. And it doesn't have to be screaming and yelling and everything else. He does a very quiet intensity, almost like Clint Eastwood a little bit, but it's very intense, but it draws you in. It makes you care about the character. But the rest of it was so good. Even when he went and met with all the bigwigs at one of the companies, all those men fit that role. I mean, it's amazing how they can take people that predominantly English cast and find enough people to fit very specific roles. I'm very impressed. They did a great job.
How about you, Julie? Did you pick out Rob Stark's wife right away?
Oh, straight away, Mace Tyrell, the High Sparrow. I was like, this is crazy. And then, especially with one of the first scenes being his dad with the coins on the eyes, it felt very Game of Thrones to me, which you guys know I love. So that was a good starting point. I didn't exactly find that the stepsister seemed innocent. I feel like she looks guilty all over. But I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see that she put that whole red wedding business behind her and moved on.
Right.
We always remembered to tip our waitresses and our cab drivers, and apparently back then your gravedigger as well. I'm going to throw this out to you first, Kate. Have you ever walked into an event and got the same reception James Delaney did when he showed up at his dad's funeral?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. No, I don't think so. Because, everyone kind of was shocked about him and was kind of pushing him away. And obviously they were all kind of scared of him. I'm not a very scary person. So I don't think I've ever walked into an event and been treated like that.
First of all, Kate, if you have to think about that for a minute.
You have to go over everything in your life. You never know.
How about you, Ig? Have you ever walked into an event and got the same stares?
Well, despite my own wedding, not much. Sometimes people are like, why is he here? I thought maybe he would back out. But I don't think there's many people on the planet that have gotten that kind of reception, because it was twofold. One, he was known to be very strong and able to do things, make things happen. But he was also known to be dead. So if you're known to be dead and all of a sudden here you walk in, you're going to get a strange look once in a while.
Honestly, being a black guy who likes to travel, I've had a couple of occasions where I walk into a setting, and never too negative, but where I walk into a place where I'm definitely the only person there, and you definitely get that look sometimes where and you can feel it, like the tension's thick. And honestly, I grew up in New York, so I've never had a bad situation, but I've certainly had a couple of situations in which I'm very well aware that I'm the only kind of black person in a large group of people, and that I'm not the only person that's aware of that. So I've definitely, nothing that bad, but I've had similar situations occasionally.
Yeah, our good friend Cage goes through that a lot too when we go places, and he often brings it up, walking in somewhere and being the only person of color in there, and people are kind of eyeing you. However, I've experienced the reverse, where I've been with them out, and they'll give him the proverbial head nod and then kind of brush past me. So I always pretend to take offense, like, "Hey, man, I opened the door for you. How come I don't get the head nod?"
As a kid, I kind of had the reverse. So I'm happy. My dad's white. My mom's black. So growing up, I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood in Brooklyn, and so I would see the reverse with my dad, where he lived like my parents split when I was young. So he would come pick us up on the weekends and take us home and take us back. And so anytime he was with us in that area, it was always like he was the one that got the weird looks, like, wait, what's this white guy doing in this neighborhood? So I've seen it. I saw it the reverse as a kid.
All right. Having a conversation with Father Delaney's power of attorney, his lawyer, he finds out he inherited a worthless piece of land on the other side of the world.
Well, so-called worthless.
Well, based on his reaction, based on the reaction he got from his sister and brother-in-law, do you think this is true?
Well, I don't think it's true, and I think everybody's trying to sell him on the fact that it's not true. It's true. Oh, yeah, it's worthless. You don't want it. It's just rocks. Nothing going on. Can't do anything there. Worthless. But he's kind of a smart person, and he shows so later in the episode.
Yeah, the more people that tell you, oh, you don't want that. You really don't want that. Oh, that's crap.
I was about to say, I really think I was going to say the exact same thing as you. I think that land's going to be worth a ton of stuff. Money, probably.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's worth all the people that are secretly want it. Obviously, it's of high value.
Anything to add, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that obviously it's very clear, right off the bat that land is important on some level, and that would be kind of central to a lot of the story.
Do you guys ever wonder how odd it is that people are so bad at selling the fact that something is worthless when it's not? I mean, I saw that, and that to me made me question. I mean, if you just kind of maybe didn't even talk about it and just go, oh, that land? Good. I'm glad you've got it. That might have done better than, oh, yeah, it's just rocks. And yeah, I don't know what, we'll give you some money for it.
Well, that was the thing. Even though during the conversation, the land was referred to a worthless pile of rocks, a poison chalice, and a pig's ass. Based off the looks that James gave the lawyer, do you think he was buying it, Ig?
Absolutely not. And I don't know as Mr. Delaney is willing to buy anything from anyone there. I think he's got his own agenda about everything. He already knows what he wants to do, how he wants to do it, who he wants to involve.
Yeah, he definitely seems to be a step ahead. What do you think, Ryan? Do you think they kind of gave it away with how hard they were trying to play it casual?
Yeah, definitely. And, I think I guess everyone was in shock, and maybe they expected him to just be naive or to roll over quickly, and maybe they didn't take the time to consider that he had some interest in the land. So I think it was more them just not taking him seriously and not considering that maybe he has some need for the land, and it came back to bite them.
Show of hands, has anybody ever inherited anything here that it resulted in some sort of legal battle or some sort of internal family squabble afterwards?
There was a little bit of an inheritance. A family member passed away not too long ago, and there was kind of, I won't go too much into detail on the off chance that anybody listens, like any of the family members listen to it. But basically, there was kind of a couple family members that were in control of the estate, and there was intent to leave something to other members of the family, but one of the people behind the scenes kind of did some sketchy things to kind of keep control of the estate, and then decided on his own how things would be divided up. And I kind of found out after the fact some things that I wasn't very happy about, and I think it was just kind of unethical the way that the way he went about things. My perspective, I just kind of said, if you want to ruin relationships based on that, that's fine. I'm not going to fight or argue about it. But it was kind of a messed up situation. So I've kind of dealt with this not too long ago, actually.
You're definitely the bigger person there. I've seen so many families completely break down because of this.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories.
I think it's a subject a lot of people can relate to, and that's why the show kind of identifies with people, because I too have seen plenty of times when this has happened. Unfortunately, I've never had that kind of good/bad luck. Did you get the sense James telling his sister that he still loved her wasn't in a brotherly way?
I absolutely got that sense, and I don't know. I believe it's stepsisters, so they are related through marriage and marriage alone.
I thought that
I don't know if it was a stepsister or a half sister.
I think it's half sister, because I think it's the same father but different mothers.
Oh, I thought at some point he says something about your brother and she goes step, but maybe I was mistaken.
Well, honestly, like, just in life, I've heard, because I have a few half brothers and sisters, and I've heard it alternatively referred to as both. I've heard people refer to them or, as half and step, and I'm always confused as to what someone's referring to when they say half brother,
well, half
sister,
would be
or half
one of the same parents, and step would be coming in from the new parent.
So you would think so, but I've heard people refer to step as one of the same parents. No, I'm not saying that's the right way. Just I've heard it referred to as that. So sometimes that can be confusing. Like trying to figure out what's the person referring to.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw it out there again. I think we might have been like 10 minutes in, and I was like, "What, brother and sister love? This sounds familiar."
Yeah, it totally wasn't innocent brotherly love, though. It was definitely deeper. I don't know if it went all the way to sexual love, but it was definitely something more than just, I love you, sis.
Oh, it was for sure. I mean, I was watching the show and I texted Julie and was like, hold up. Do we have some incest going on here? Because, I mean, the way that he said, I think he said, like, I'll never stop loving you. I mean, No one just walks up to their sibling like, oh, by the way, I'll never stop loving you. It was way too...
Wasn't it something to the extent of one of the things my absence didn't cure
Yeah,
was
that's
my
the
love
one
for
I'm
you?
looking for.
So my question is, does her husband know? Like, does he have a clue, or is he completely
I think he knows for
oblivious
sure.
to it? Because you could feel it just watching it. Like, you could feel the tension just watching it on watching the show. So I wonder, is it something? Are there rumors, or does he think about it, or is he just kind of blinding, kind of ignoring it?
So far, I think he's completely one-sided, where he's seeing the deal that he made with the East Indian Trading Company going away because the rightful heir to the shipping empire is now back. He and the sister have now spent all this time preparing a deal with which I think they were going to become at least somewhat wealthy. And with a simple opening of a door and walking down the aisle, it's gone.
There is a scene, though, middle of the way between his sister and her husband, and it pretty much implies that he knows something is off about their relationship. That's the way I read it. Now, and I watched the show, this episode, twice, so maybe because I maybe that's how I implied it more the second time. I don't remember catching it the first time like that, but I felt like he implied he knew something.
It really seems that he's there and he's all about the money. I don't think he has a clue about the relationship. I also think that we're going to find out down the road that maybe he married her intentionally under the direction of the East Indian Trading Company to kind of seal this deal. So they'll, no matter what they pay them, they're going to get it done one way or the other. They really don't explain Delaney's absence for the last 10 years. Do you think it had anything to do with his sister, Rick?
Well, I think some of it was things that I saw, things that I picked up during the show. While it may have had something to do with his sister, I think it also had to do with who he's become. Because he was assumed dead in a slaving ship accident. I think he just spent the rest of the time in Africa becoming some form of mythical, scientific shaman who can do anything he wants. He's almost an X-Men at this point.
So the East Indian Trading Company convenes to speak about the passing of Father Delaney and also how they're going to kind of get this the deal that they've made and the fact that Delaney showed back up and it's maybe put it in peril. And they even go as far to suggest of possibly doing away with him. Once again, we see, like Julie said, the head sparrow from Game of Thrones. We see Mace Tyrell. The casting is huge in this.
And Mace Tyrell plays the same idiot.
He really does, just completely aloof. Typecast. That very, distant, oh, how dare, he always has that how dare you look about it. They discuss also James being a cadet under the head of the East Indian Trading Company, his rebellious ways. After a dull run as a cadet, he left for Africa, and he crashed on a ship, and he was presumed dead. And then the rumors start. That was kind of a great scene because they were taking notes up until that point until somebody raised their hand, and then they would stop. And then they said, and the rumors started about him in Africa. Right away, when the guy went to answer, he raised his hand we can't have the things that we think this guy did on record.
Totally. Yeah, I totally picked up on that because it just seemed like, everything they do in that room is recorded until somebody puts their hand up and that guy knows, put my quill away, basically put my headphones on, go into La La Land, even though there was no headphones and no La La Land. He just puts the quill away and sits there and lets it happen. It seemed like there's things they want recorded and sometimes there's things they don't. What they're trying to do is show a level of transparency that isn't real.
Yeah, I picked up on it. I was just wondering why that speculation or the rumors, why was it necessary to not keep track of it? Is there what fear, what was the fear of that kind of that speculation? Is it a fear of it getting out, of some kind of retaliation for it, or of scaring other people? What was the reason for not just recording that? That was my only kind of question, because I they made it a point to announce, if anyone has something to say that they don't want to be recorded, raise your hand, and then they raise it during that point. So it's just kind of confused as to why it was so important to do it for that scene, rather than, let's say, a scene where they're talking, let's say if they're talking about retribution or getting back at him or killing him or something, where you definitely would want to not record that.
Maybe what he was up to ran counterproductive to the company, and they didn't want that on the record. Maybe he's been attacking their interests all along. That's a really good question that'll probably get answered in later episodes, I think.
I would think that, quite honestly, it would be to keep themselves from looking foolish or stupid should those records leave. If you put out information that is erroneous or is bad or is just plain crazy, which this show is heading toward plain crazy, but to say plain crazy things, sometimes it comes out poorly, and that might not be their desire, since they're near royalty. They're lords and everything in England, and they're people of power. So I think they're trying to protect their image more than anything else, regardless of anything is useful. That's why they stopped it, but still got the information. The only thing I was sad about is they didn't tell us the rumors.
Yeah, it's probably a plot point that we're going to find out at some later juncture. I'm sure there'll be flashback scenes and everything else.
They did imply some things maybe towards the end of it. I think bestiality.
Sure, why not? From a heart of America, the answer is always bestiality. If they're not banging a van, they're banging their sister or some farm animals.
He had sex with a pig or something. I swear at the end, at some point, somebody was yelling about it.
No matter what the answer is, bestiality is always the answer. That's like if you're playing D&D and you roll a 20. It's a critical hit. Bestiality. Every single time. A fully acted scene where James goes to visit his father's closest confidant. James reveals some things that he didn't or shouldn't have known. It's sort of like his mother was a native to the island that his dad bought, and he knows that he bought the island for gunpowder. And he bought a wife. James seems to possess great foresight on things he couldn't possibly know, or things he couldn't have found out while he was in Africa. Is he this type of guy that has his finger on the pulse of everything, or is he showing some sort of abilities?
I mean, that's the great mystery, right? Like it kind of teases and hints at him having some sort of abilities, and what did he learn in Africa? Is he some shaman? Is he, does he have some ability to foresight or to see the past, or, and I think, as far as how the first episode shows it, I don't know. I'm thinking he has this power, or he might have some kind of power, but it could just be that he just kind of knows the right people, or he has his finger on the pulse. He asks the right questions. He's encountered the right people. So I guess that's a big part of the mystery of this show, and we may not find out for a while, because that's a big selling point. It's like what did he do in Africa, and that's a huge part of what I think what I would expect that we'd learn as the show goes on.
I'm gonna be totally honest. I didn't get that at all. I thought that he was showing that he still had contacts and sources even when he was gone, and maybe even still was keeping in contact with his dad about some stuff that his dad didn't lead on. But I mean, I don't know. I might be the only one who got that impression.
How about you, Ig? I mean, is he the Han Solo of the Taboo universe, where he's a step ahead of everybody else and silver-tongued, or do you think he has some sort of abilities?
Well, I think he's the great-grandfather of Charles Xavier and can just read everybody's mind. So, again, back to the X-Men reference, but I would seem to think this has something to do with his time in Africa. I'm not sure that it doesn't have something to do with him having some form of correspondence with his father. That could be possible, but I don't think that's the only thing that was happening. And some of it might purely be a Sherlock-esque type of investigation ability, where he's able to take the little snippets that he has and form a cohesive line back. Now, figuring out that his mother was a Native American, basically, that's a special trick. I'm interested to find out where this goes.
Yeah, I definitely kind of thought that he certainly has some sort of, maybe it's implied that he has some sort of witchcraft or powers like that. And then also, I do think that he can sort of seem to find out information on his own through whatever means he does that. He could have ran into people when he was away in Africa or something like that, but I definitely think it's not all one thing. I don't think it's just I'm into witchcraft or whatever, and that's how I know these things, or I, like Egg said, was corresponding with certain people. I think there might be just a culmination of things there.
We have a fun fact here that Tom Hardy is the only person left in the universe that hasn't either played Professor Xavier or Spider-Man for Marvel. So we go back and forth a little bit. Delaney is kind of taking care of some old business. We find out that he has a child that he really hasn't taken care of or seen or paid for in the last 10 years. And then we cut to a scene where his father's being dug up and brought in for an autopsy. The results come back conclusive that he was poisoned. But Did you get the idea that between the description of the madness that is sudden death, that we knew all along that there was some foul play in his death?
Oh, definitely there was foul play. I mean, there was no question in my mind at all that, you go from being a person that's doing things right. I mean, we all know that, yeah, you can kind of lose your sanity as you age and everything, but it's a gradual thing. You don't all of a sudden wake up one day just kooky. I knew there had to be something going on, and I'm glad, honestly, that they were able to show that, because now that gives motivation for things to happen further in this show.
How about you, Julie? Did you get the sense that you knew he was poisoned all along?
Yeah, I got that sense, and I have a feeling I think I know who did it. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, wow. Calm down, Sherlock. How about you, Kate?
Yeah, I definitely got the sense that there was foul play with this.
Well, because, too, I mean, we also know these people are all seeking out this island, and we know at this point it's worth something, so it makes the most sense. But I think it's...
Yeah, my only question is there's like 40 different people that they've shown us, and there's only 20 people in the show, and somehow there's 40 people that could have done it because they all want a piece of this.
But I think we have to look deep.
Well, now I'm just curious.
I mean, I'll tell you who I think did it.
Who?
Well, no, don't do that.
Okay.
And lo and behold, we find out that Delaney's father was poisoned, which contributed to the madness and death. Another bit of discord between Delaney's sister and her husband over the inheritance that seems to be weighing heavily on him, where he almost forces her arm behind the back and makes her write a note to James. We cut over to Delaney paying the foster family for his son. He gives him a large amount of coin for the care. He tells him it's for the past, present, and future. The foster father asks, would you like to speak to him? And he says, I'm unfit to be around children. Ig, what did you mean? What do you think he meant that he's unfit to be around children?
Well, I think in his time away, he has become something else completely. And that's where I think this Taboo name comes from. I don't know as he is really alive, really dead, really anything other than something mystical. And that's where I think that comes from. So I think in his time in Africa, he has turned into something that is not normal, and we just haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, so as Ig mentions, the name of the show is Taboo. So you start to wonder, what's taboo? We have some mystery. We have the mystery of the land, and what's the purpose of that? But then there's kind of what are the most common taboos in our society, and you've got incest and pedophilia, and so both of those seemingly are hinted at during the show. So I think when he said that was kind of my first thought was, okay, well, this is tying back to the name of the show. And I guess it's another weird mystery. But yeah, I think that, obviously he's changed. Well, maybe not changed if there was some kind of relationship before him leaving, but his time in Africa, helped to develop something in him. And he almost seems like he's unfit to deal with people, and he has his agenda, and that's it. And he's kind of seems to be centrally focused. And, interestingly enough, it almost seems like a person who understands his weaknesses, and is doing what he needs to do to stay focused on whatever the task at hand is.
And let's not forget that bestiality being taboo as well.
That is true, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. But I was kind of thinking also maybe, he's been away. He hasn't had a relationship with this boy, his son. And, what are you going to do? Come back and be like, oh, hey, man, I'm your dad, and start a conversation for 5 minutes and then leave again. So I think it made sense, too, that he was just like, there's no point in me speaking with this kid and having conversations because I've been around, I've seen things. And
my only problem with that argument is it seems too easy. This show seems like it's heading into a complexity, as you said before, like Game of Thrones, similar to Westworld. There's going to be some complexities in this show, and I don't think that they're going to take easy ways out of things.
Well, complexities in the sense that it's like he's been around, he's seen things, and children are innocent, and it's like he might not know even how to relate on a level like that of, what he's been through, even trying to relate to a young person, a child.
But I tend to agree with Ig on this because I think that the way the line and the way he delivers it seems more like out of a knowledge of himself, that a knowledge of what what is inside of him and less of kind of a reluctance to build a relationship with him. Because otherwise he would have said that, I'm not ready or not right now, or he would have left it open-ended. But this seemed as if he knows like there's something deep-seated in me that I need to stay away from him for his own safety.
Well, we get a sense of that, too, when he goes to his family offices, which have been shuttered and turned into a whorehouse. I believe they're near or on the docks. And he gets in a conversation with the madam of the place, Helga, and she says, I remember you. If we give you a girl, we might not get her back. So when he returns home, he receives yet another note from his sister, basically saying that her husband forced her to write the other note, but she's deeply in love with him. Do you think that the brother-in-law could possibly be more of a danger to James than the East Indian Trading Company?
They seem pretty devious, and they're working as a collective group, although they also seemed pretty easily stumped. I'm going to say it's about 50-50 at this point, so far. I don't see that he's any more dangerous than the rest of them as a group working together are going to be.
How about you, Kate? Do you feel that the brother-in-law is a danger to Delaney's health?
No, I don't. I feel like he's one of those guys that puffs out his chest and is like, because I'll kill him. But in all reality, I feel like he's kind of harmless. Like, there's something about him that does not intimidate me at all. And I feel like even his wife kind of gets that sense when she's like, oh, but why? Like, why are you going to do that? Like, I feel like she's even getting the sense of like, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah, he really looks like he's more dirty look than bite.
Little bit of the posh Londoner vibe I get from him, where it's almost like he seems like he has an honor-bound duty to do something and stand up for something, but when it comes to actual skill, unless the guy wants to do pistols at 10 paces, there'd be no chance. And even then, again, I think Tom Hardy has become something else in this show. So pistols at 10 paces might, even if he got the shot off first, might not matter.
We cut to a great and a well-acted scene where Delaney finally sits down with his good friends at the East Indian Trading Company, and he starts the conversation off with a great line. He says, "Understand, hypocrisy is what I hate the most." Ryan, did you get the sense that he knew what he had inherited all along?
Yeah, I definitely got the sense that he knew what he inherited all along, and that he, I guess was trying to make clear to them that he's a force to be reckoned with. And that line, is a great opener.
It really is. Julie, how about you? Did you get the sense after he laid everything out for the East Indian Trading Company, all the players, what the area was, what it meant? It turned out that he inherited an island which gave them the rights to the whole island of Vancouver. Do you get the feeling that he understood what he inherited?
Oh, without a doubt. And he really was sticking it to them. And it was like he was waiting for this meeting to happen. And when he was talking to the High Sparrow and he was saying, I learned everything from you. I learned how to be this way from you. I forget the exact words he was saying as far as evil, I think, or something, but it came from him. And he's been waiting to just be able to be like, I know who you are. I see who you are. You taught me. And I'm going to call you out on it.
Yeah, the pure understanding of everything that was happening up to and including all of the deals that are about to happen with the brand new United States. Laying out the land, where the borders were going to go, and the importance of where he was, regardless of which side it goes to. Whether it ends up in the United States or Canada, the power that comes with that little piece of land he's got is immense. And knowing that, and he shuts them down so fiercely. And it was almost cold. I almost wanted to yell cold-blooded like I was Rick James. Cold-blooded. Because he just shut him down.
Once again, though, he's showing that he's 10 steps ahead of everybody else, including this. They were the most powerful shipping conglomerate in the world. At that point, England was the end-all, be-all of just about everything around the globe. And he had information he shouldn't have had. He understood the importance of the island. He understood that it's the direct route to China. So I think they really met a formidable match with James Delaney. They call on his loyalty, which he seems to have absolutely none of. Do you think, Julie, that his refusal was as much business as it was personal? Do you think that he wouldn't sell the island because there's some sort of revenge or some sort of plan afoot other than just a business decision?
Well, clearly, he knows his father was poisoned now. He knows that these guys are wanting this island. They're getting angry about even dealing with him. He came out of nowhere. They thought they had their plans underway with the brother-in-law, and now he's kind of screwed up all their plans. And I think he knows that there's a high likelihood one of them might have been involved, or all of them are involved with the death of his father. So for sure, this is completely personal.
I think all of the above. I think that he definitely, obviously there's a personal aspect to it with his father dying. Obviously he realizes that there's huge value to it. So it's worth holding on to. I think also he might derive some kind of personal satisfaction from being a few steps ahead, because it does seem like he I don't know if it's like something about his performance makes me feel like he enjoys kind of the feeling of always being a little bit ahead of somebody, and of kind of telling somebody something that he's not supposed to know. So I think there are a number, maybe also there's some kind of mystical value or property to the land itself. So I think there's a lot there, and it could be any or all of those explanations.
Well, I think it's more personal than anything else. Business is always going to be a part of it, because while he may be more than just a simple man at this point, there's still money makes the world go round. But what I think is maybe the most personal thing is his heritage, since his mother came from the land that he's inheriting in North America. I think that may turn into something that is driving him further than anything else, because I think, yes, spending all that time in Africa may have helped him become a shaman or whatever we were talking about earlier, but I think also that's something that existed in Native American culture as well. So there may be some ties between the two to make those combine in together. So I think it's by far more personal than it is business.
Ryan, first episode of Taboo. What would you rate it, and would you recommend it to your friends?
I would rate it as a first episode of the show. I would give it a solid 8. Yeah, definitely give it a solid 8. I think it's not for everyone. The themes are pretty heavy. It's dirty, just a dirty show. The way the things are presented. Like I said, I like it. It feels lived in. It feels like, in 1812 or 1814, England, like that's what things would look like. So I really enjoy how, the set design and the costume design, but it's not for everybody. It's a slower moving show. It does require you to really sit and pay attention, and even a second viewing. So, I give it a solid 8. I'm really excited for the show. I'm excited to see where it goes. I love Tom Hardy's performance, and I love, just most of the performances on the show. So yeah, that would be my score for the show.
The look of the character definitely fits. Tom Hardy fits this character to a T. It's almost like the show was written for him rather than him written into the show. Julie, what would you give the show, and would you recommend it to your friends?
Yeah, here's the thing. I do like the show better second time around than I did the first time around. I think I'm going to go ahead and follow Ryan's lead and go with an 8 on this, because I did give it a second viewing. I was not grabbed into this show like I was Game of Thrones or Westworld on that first show. The very first show did not, make me feel excited. But when I gave it a second viewing, and then I paid more attention and saw some more things, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty good show. So I have to say, I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8. And I would recommend it.
I mean, I liked it. I really did, in the sense of I would recommend it to some friends that I know do want to sit down and really pay attention to a show and think it out. But if you're looking for just like an after work just want to chill out, this is definitely not the show. I would have to give it probably like a 7, because it doesn't have that intriguing, like, it took me a while. It almost took this conversation of us talking about it and chewing it over and talking about details for me to be like, oh yeah, I am interested. Oh, I do want to know what happens with that, because alone I wasn't drawn in. But it is something that I would go back to and give another shot.
For me, it's the same. I mean, it wasn't a drop the mic first episode like we got out of Game of Thrones or like we got out of Westworld. It more reminded me of an HBO show called The Night Of, where it was a really slow burn to start, but it was intriguing enough to come back. I would definitely recommend it to some friends, like you guys said. I'd give it an 8.
Yeah, I would give it an 8. I would recommend it to my more internalizing friends, people that spend more time wanting to understand what's going on, people that maybe right away would watch it a second time. What sold it for me, Tom Hardy's performance alone, I would watch this again. The other performances were great, but Tom Hardy was amazing. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Cinik Radio Podcast. We're going to call this a 7.9. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Slenderman. Stick around.
Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
What's up for me this week is Season 2 of Voltron Legendary Defender. As an 80s kid, Voltron was one of my favorite cartoons and probably the best toy of all time. And even as an adult, I was really excited when I heard about Season 1, and it didn't disappoint. Season 1 was awesome. And so far, Season 2 has been met with glowing reviews. I haven't watched it yet, but I intend on spending the next few hours consuming as much of it as I can, because as I said, Season 1 was great. If you haven't seen Season 1, definitely check it out. And so far, the reviews for Season 2 are great, so check that out too. And so again, that's what's up for me.
Hey guys, my what's up this week is for Amazon Prime's new series, Sneaky Pete, which was released last week. I'm pretty excited because this is my very first Amazon Prime original TV show. And after 3 years of having Amazon Prime, I'm not disappointed. The show stars Giovanni Ribisi as Marius, a con man who realizes bad things are waiting on him the second he leaves prison. So he comes up with a plan where he intends to assume the identity of his former cellmate, Pete. He moves in with Pete's dysfunctional family and is roped into the family bond business. And his plan seems to be working, and everyone seems to be falling for his con man charms. But are they really? Also starring in this show is the incomparable Bryan Cranston as Vince, the guy that is behind the reason Marius went to jail in the first place, and his efforts to track down our con man Marius, whatever it takes. This show drew me in immediately, and with some outstanding reviews and already receiving an 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb, I'm sure it's a show you're not going to want to miss either. So Sneaky Pete on Amazon. That's what's up.
My what's up for this week, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was going to talk flying cars. But this one made me not only stop and take notice, but be proud to be a member of this country. And that was the Women's March. Thousands of protests, including millions of women all over the country, began popping up the other day. My whole life, I heard nothing but terms like you throw like a girl and you cry like a girl. Most of the time directed at Igri, but still. Now we can change these outdated sayings to, you stand up and you protest like a woman. Women have fought for decades for equality, not only at home, but at work and society too. And I speak for everyone at the podcast when I say, we stand with you. Women of America, you're what's up.
What's up for me this week is the 2-minute and 15-second trailer for the new movie coming on the 3rd of March, 2017, Logan. Our final foray into the Wolverine series. This follows the Marvel Comics series of Old Man Logan. We get to see him fighting with a nice little girl who looks to be X-23, and this trailer is amazing and gives me super high hopes for the movie. You are going to love this movie, but you are really going to love this trailer. Go and check it out. YouTube, IMDb, anywhere you can find it. The trailer for Logan. That's what's up.
All right, we touched on Taboo. Now we're going to jump across to HBO and their documentary, Beware the Slenderman. Kate, I'm going to go to you first and foremost. Before this documentary or before the advertisements, were you aware of the urban legend of the Slenderman?
I was actually very much so aware of the urban legend of Slenderman. I had some friends who had told me about it, and they had extensively researched Slenderman, and then I kind of researched it to see what it was all about. Freaked me out, and I kind of backed off.
Yeah, I heard of Slenderman through, I guess. Initially, I heard about it as a game. I think my stepkids used to play it. And then I was listening to a podcast a while back, and they were talking about creepypasta. And so then they were talking a little about more about the Slenderman. So I got a little bit about it.
Yeah, I heard about it definitely when it got into its prime, as I had a teenager living in my house at the time and was obsessed with all the Slenderman stuff. I guess that was the teenage thing to do at the time. Thankfully, not every teenage experience with Slenderman turned into what this show turned into.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a good segue. I mean, it seems to be a generational thing because I'm also aware of Slenderman, but only through a younger coworker. He kind of filled me in on what it was when we first saw the advertisements, and he'd been talking about a video game, I guess they had for it. As you can see, that this is definitely a generational thing from the internet that older people probably weren't aware about. And going into the story, we could see how possibly the parents would be completely in the dark about what their kids might have been doing and what they might have been studying. So we cut to the meat of the matter, and it's May 13th, 2014, and a 12-year-old girl named Anissa and Morgan lure a friend of theirs from school, Peyton, to a playground. They end up stabbing her repeatedly in hopes of killing her to please Slender. I believe she's stabbed 19 times. And left for dead. And when they kind of tell her to lay still, be quiet, and they head off to find Slender's mansion, I guess at a forest, a national park that's over a 5-hour drive away. They're subsequently picked up, arrested, booked, and most of the documentary takes place in the interrogation room. They start breaking down the legend of Slender. And they bring up a site called Creepypasta. Ig, have you heard of that site?
Again, I heard of it through my daughter, who was in her mid-teens at the time. I tried to get her away from it because I could see some of the influences, and she was becoming very obsessed. She was almost too involved in it, but not to the point where she was going to go do something, just that it was almost causing her to have emotional outbreaks because she was worried about what if this is real? And, and the thing is with kids, you can get them to believe that the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy are real, so why couldn't Slenderman be real too? So it's one of those things that I had to explain to her that, there are urban legends that have been in existence in this country and in the world itself for millennia. And that's it. A lot of it is created to keep people honest.
Yeah, I guess I need some clarification, and I feel like I'm a little bit out of it because I saw there was this website Creepypasta on this documentary. But what is it? Is it a website that basically details all kinds of urban legends or all kinds of scary people? How do you get involved? Like, why was your stepdaughter or your daughter getting obsessed with it? What's happening on it?
I took it to be a fan fiction site. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that's what I took from it. That it was kind of stories that were kind of stories that were told that kind of have some, that are usually involve murder or something, some creepy aspect to it that kind of was meant to kind of scare you, but done in a way that was, at least from what I would see, kind of done in a way to be spread, to be sent kind of virally, that you want to share this idea with somebody because there's always, you tell the story and there's some kind of twist at the end. And it kind of reminded me of like when I was a kid reading like these urban legend books that were kind of scary, but like you wanted to read each story and they always had some kind of weird, intriguing twist at the end that was meant to terrify you and then make you want to read more, but you were still scared. And it reminded me of some of the stuff that I would just read when I was younger, but in online.
Well, it was a wiki-based site, which meant that it's built by the users that are reading the site. So you had people that were taking something that initially may have been quite small and building it further and further.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, like Ig said, it is it's all like Wikipedia, so everyone just kind of builds on it, and it can get kind of out of control sometimes with what people want to add and what they want to say. But we used to read it, honestly, at sleepovers because everyone likes a good scary story.
Well, and the thing is it wasn't just Slenderman that was on Creepypasta. It was basically creepy things. Like Kate was saying, it's more about scary stories and things like that. But what they were doing at Creepypasta was putting on modern twists. And at Creepypasta, the big hitter was Slenderman. So
Slenderman was the A-list urban legend of the whole site?
Yes.
So apparently Slenderman can be between 6 and 14 feet tall. He can have tendrils. He can teleport. He's got mind control and all the makings of a good time. Although Unfortunately, Julie, I didn't see anything about bestiality, but I'm sure you could get on, since it's a wiki, and add it yourself if you want. The neat part about this documentary is that we get to spend time with the two girls' parents and try to figure out and, kind of unwrap what exactly happened here. Morgan's mom was concerned from her daughter about her daughter at a young age. She lacked empathy. They bring her to movies such as Bambi, and it was more about saving herself rather than the loss on the screen. Do you think, Julie, as a parent, that she should have been concerned from that point, or do young children often lack empathy?
I think being a parent is a hard job, and I think you never know what should be a red flag. I think a lot of times you can look at other people's kids and be like, ooh, that's a red flag over there. Why aren't you doing something about it? But sometimes it's hard to see it within your own kid. And a lot of times you might be deceiving yourself about what you're seeing. And it's like, oh, well, they just didn't, maybe she was like, she just didn't react. Maybe she was too young to get it. Maybe I thought she was going to react and she just didn't get it. And the Bambi story and whatnot. But I think that, it is important to really not miss red flags with your kids, because I think we see them all the time where parents have tragedies happen and they're like, I just didn't see it. I didn't see it. And I think it's never quite that hidden. I think there are big red flags, and I don't think they're ever quite that hidden. You just sometimes maybe don't want to admit it to yourself, or just think it's a phase, they'll grow out of it or whatever. And you got to pay attention to what your gut is telling you about your kids.
Yeah, I think it's the blind spot from being too close to everything and not wanting to believe that somebody that you raised and instilled your values and your ways of thinking and everything could be even having the potential to do any of these types of things. And sometimes when you're too close to something, seeing what's happening in it is difficult. And even if you do see it, you're more in denial than you'd like to be. And that's a difficult position to be in as a parent.
Yeah, I agree with you there. We find out circumstances later in the movie later in the documentary that I feel that they, maybe she should have been paying closer attention. However, she says that she was aware of Morgan's fixation with the Slenderman, and as a child, she used to read Stephen King. Ryan, is it the same thing anymore, or have the internet taken it to a whole new dangerous level?
I think the internet's just changed everything. It disconnects us. We know this. Like, it disconnects us from reality, and I think or disconnects people from reality in a way that I guess we didn't experience. Like when we were teenagers, I know when I was a teenager, I had just gotten online, and it was like a dial-up internet, so you still had to interact with other people, and I think it's really easy to get lost now in the internet, and you can become obsessed, and your obsessions can be satisfied easily. If I'm obsessed with Slenderman, I can go and find a million different websites and web pages and articles about Slenderman, and I can just dive so deep down the rabbit hole. That becomes an issue for somebody who's prone to that type of obsession and who maybe has some sociopathic tendencies. So, I think largely good parenting can kind of protect against it. But even good parenting, sometimes it's hard to monitor and follow every step of the way, that a kid kind of diving down deep into this and them being affected by it.
How about you, Ig? Do you think it's more of a rabbit hole now with the digital platform than it was when you could just shut a book and kind of put it out of your mind and go about your day?
Oh, by far it is. And the thing is because even the schools are granting these children access to technology that allows them to do these things. My kids, for example, every kid in the school district gets an iPad from the school for the school year. So even if I should take the technology that I give to my children away, they still have to have this iPad in order to do their schoolwork. Well, it also has web browsing and YouTube and everything else. They get to go look at the things, drag themselves down the hole, get just infatuated with something, and I have to continually chase them to try and see what they're doing, and there's only so much of it I can do because they're not even physically around me enough of the day for me to do all of it because they go to school, I go to work. It's a really tricky thing to deal with.
Kate, do you think Slenderman would have grew as big as he did without the internet? Do you think if it was Slenderman was a Stephen King book, do you think he would have been the phenomenon he is today?
I think that the internet definitely helped, but I mean, I also think that I kind of grew up half and half where we did not have internet until I was a little bit older because, well, it just wasn't a necessity. It was out, but it was a necessity. And we still obsessed over things. I mean, that's just something you do. We found even something as simple as Bloody Mary. Okay, it was this crazy game that we played. We obsessed so hard that that's all we did when we went to sleepovers. We would tell each other stories. We'd ask our parents about it. We would make girls go in the bathroom. I mean, these girls were like, not make them, but like it was scary. I remember going in the bathroom crying, but trying to please my friends. Like just, I don't know if it's a gender thing, but I know that girls in general are going to obsess. Now the internet definitely makes it more accessible. Like I said, everything that we did was kind of word of mouth and asking about stories and asking what other people had said. And so the internet makes it more accessible, but I think that that is just something that happens. And I think the internet helps with pictures and stuff too, because we didn't have that portion. Well, Slenderman is also very popular in the sense of all the artwork that people make of him and stuff like that. So I think the internet helped, but I definitely think that it still would have happened, just maybe not as wide scale.
Well, yeah, and I think the things spread much. I think you're right that we can obsess over many things, and kids obsess over things. That's what happens. I think it spreads. The speed at which it spread is something that you can't have without the internet. I guess the variety of content associated with it, because like even if you obsess over, if you don't have the internet, like the internet kind of presents this kind of isolated obsession where you can kind of be stuck in your own world in front of your computer. And let's say, if this is 30 years ago and I obsessed over a story, I'd at least need to get up and go to the library, to feed that obsession, or I'd obsess with friends. And often, when you're online, you can do all that just sitting in front of your computer and again, just dive deep down. So I think it's like the internet allows our obsessive nature. It enhances it in a way that I think it can be more detrimental. But I think you are right that as kids, teenagers, you're going to obsess over things.
And one further point to that, when Slenderman really started getting big, I was living in Hawaii. Okay, when these things were happening 20, 30 years ago, before the internet was in its prevalence, something like that may not have reached there for another 3 or 4 years. You got to get enough people to move over there to say something for it to gain any traction. However, with the internet, it gained traction in Hawaii, where just about everything is behind immediately. So the internet, powerful force.
All right, during Morgan's interrogation, she really kind of meekly asked, "Is Bella okay?" She didn't really want to talk about Slenderman. She actually kind of put it at the feet of Anissa. Ryan, did you see the lack of empathy in her interrogation videos?
Oh yeah, and it's funny with all this various personalities in the media going on and the armchair diagnoses. I was there was a part of my brain that wanted to say, well, let's not try to diagnose her or say that she has any tendencies, because I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but it's like it was obvious that there was just something missing. It was just blank. And you could tell it even just in the conversation. And again, I'm a little, part of me gives pause because editing, you're editing for a movie or a TV show or documentary. The editors can do a lot with tons of footage, but you could just see it. There was just something missing there.
Yeah, I thought that she obviously lacked empathy, and she wasn't showing a lot of emotion. And then Anissa seemed to be, obviously crying some more than Morgan, but not that much. I mean, she was crying, but it wasn't a whole lot more. And it almost struck me like maybe she knew how to play the game a little bit more than Morgan. That was my initial thoughts, and they changed, obviously, as the show went on.
We cut to Anissa's dad, Bill, who says that he was a good parent. He was actively involved in what she was doing on the internet. He was, he stayed on top of her. He made her spend time with her family. He seemed, or at least he portrayed himself as much as a victim is, Bella herself, who got stabbed, that, he put it more at the feet of the internet. Both girls being 12 years old. Kate, do you agree with them being tried as adults, seeming that they could get 65 years in prison?
I mean, that is a really, really tough question, because obviously there is a mental health issue backing this. I mean, even adults get to plead insanity and get a lesser sentence or mental health help that they need. Now, do I think that they need the punishment to realize that what they did was wrong? They cannot do this? Yes. But I also, both girls were diagnosed with mental health disorders, and that needs to be taken into account. I mean, I think that Slenderman and things like this have a bad influence. Yes, they're scary. Children are influenced by that. But it takes a certain kind of way of thinking to take it to that point. So obviously, neither one of them were completely all the way there in their minds. They have something deeper that we need to discover. So just locking them up and saying, well, you're tried as an adult, you shouldn't do this, is bad. They did the research. They found out that they had some mental health disorders. But I mean, I really think that in their sentencing, that should have been taken into consideration. Yes, what they did was wrong. It's terrible. It's an awful situation. But these girls, if they had these things under control, I think that it wouldn't have been something that they would have done.
How about you, Ig? You've dealt with 12-year-olds before. Do you think they should have been tried as adults?
Well, here's my biggest problem with this. How is it that they were able to have these young ladies in an interrogation room taking a statement against them with no representation whatsoever? There was no lawyer, no nothing. And I understand that if you just kind of waive your right to remain silent, but how can you legally expect that someone at that age understands the ramifications? I don't know, as even that loophole in itself, a lawyer would have shut all that down immediately. They wouldn't have got any of that. And that was a big problem for me. It almost seemed kind of like the things that they were doing. We talked about off the show about how this showed a lot of similarities to Making a Murderer. Funny enough, both are in Wisconsin, not all that far from each other. Got to say, something is going on in Wisconsin. Maybe they need to tone down on the cheese a little bit. But here's the thing. You gotta think that they did the same thing to Brendan Dassey, where they had him in a room by himself, no representation, nobody there to help him, nobody to say, don't talk, I got you, let me help you. They just hit this kid with definite problems. He was slow, he didn't have his full faculties available to him, and they used that to convict him and put him in prison where he's obviously going to have problems. And they're doing that the same to these girls. And I don't know if that itself, again, is a Wisconsin problem or what's going on. How did the parents not know that they had these children in custody and didn't expect that a lawyer should be provided to them there? So, no, I don't think that they should be tried as an adult, because I think they circumvented the law in getting where they were.
Yeah, real quick, I agree. And I don't know if the police or whoever just had a rush to solve the crime and have an answer as to what happened, because certain things like this tend to grab the newscast and then everybody wants an answer and it to be solved. So they're just rushing to get this done. But I agree that should have never happened. And they kind of touched on it when somebody was on the stand. The detective was on the stand, but they didn't really. That's all they did was ask him if they had contacted the parents or anything, and he just said no, and that was it. Do I think that 2 12-year-old girls should be tried as adults? No. I think that, maybe if they were 16 or 17, I could understand it more. 12 is pretty young, and I'm not lightening what they did. What they did was messed up, but they didn't actually kill.
Watching their answers in the interrogation room, though, you see that there's a disconnect between them. and what's going on, because they were still talking about they were
Right.
afraid what Slender was going to do
Right.
if they didn't go stab this girl. This shows the disconnect, and they don't know what they're doing. So you can't try them as an adult when that goes on, and they didn't have any help. I mean, you can't ask a 12-year-old girl and push and not expect her to just give you the answer, because that's what 12-year-old kids do, is they tell you what you want to hear, so you'll leave them alone.
It's a tough question to answer. What age should you be eligible to be tried for as an adult? I think it's challenging, because I think I've met 12-year-olds who are as mature as many adults I know. I've met 12-year-olds who have not developed at all. So that's a bit challenging. I think, in this case, again, we only have access to what they've decided to show us, but it definitely seems like there's some kind of a mental health issue. So while maybe they should be tried as adults, I think there does need to be some kind of obviously they do need to face consequences, and there may need to be some form of lifelong mental health treatment for one or both of them. So it's a hard one to answer without having all the information. But yeah, 12 is a young age to I guess try somebody as an adult.
Yeah, just based on their answers, this seems to be an ongoing problem in Wisconsin, too, because you can draw a lot of parallels in this documentary to Making a Murder, and you can draw a lot of parallels to Nissa to Brendan Dassey. You could tell by the answers to their questions that they weren't fully at grasp of what was going on in the situation. I mean, Morgan asked, "Is she dead?" where Anissa turned around and asked, "How far did we walk? I'm not usually very athletic. How far did we get before you guys picked us up?" Once the gravity set in, and then she started to cry and she showed a little bit more emotion. But you could tell by their answers that these kids, I think trying them as minors and 6 years would have been enough for this crime. It's not like they set out for no random legitimate reason and said we're going to murder somebody. Their reasoning was sound in their minds, as convoluted as their thinking might have been.
I also think too they didn't murder her, so I think that's to be taken into account too for being tried as an adult when. Right.
Yeah, but not by them having a change of heart and going to get help, though. I mean, if anything, they tried to prevent her from getting help.
I agree with what you're saying, but the end result was that it was attempted murder. It wasn't murder.
Over the course of the documentary, we get a look into the internet and the hive mind speak of the internet with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge and planking. They took a look at Anissa's YouTube playlist, and it's cute and fuzzy animals. It's dark quizzes like, "Are you a psychopath?" Some dark and really violent things, and Slenderman. They try to point the finger at that as well, or at least give it some sort of the blame. But I mean, if they looked at any one of our YouTube lists, even all the way up to adulthood, would it be any different? People just watch strange and crazy things. Kate, do you think her YouTube playlist is a window into her mind?
No. Well, especially with, you can start watching how to make cookies and end up on some crazy shit like we've talked about and end up on bestiality videos. You just never know. But I think the internet's such a big place and it can escalate so quickly. And honestly, she's a teenager. She's going to see shit like, "Are you a psychopath?" and think it's cool and funny to look at it. Do I think that there were some videos that I was like, oh, but I'm not a parent. I don't know. But I think as a parent, if I saw that, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, my daughter is a completely terrible person. She must be a psychopath. I would never think that, because they are teenagers. You can completely start one place and end up the other on the internet.
How about you, Ryan? Would you put your YouTube playlist on a job application?
Probably not, but it's fairly tame. But yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I think, you can stumble upon things so quickly that it's hard to, just take it piece by piece and say that's a window into someone's mind. Now, if all of their videos are murder or smut videos, then maybe there's something else to it. But if there's a smattering of different things, it's kind of hard to pass any real judgment on it, on a person, I think.
Putting yourself in these parents' shoes, this attempted murder or stabbing's taken place. There's no doubt about what the kids' intent were. There's no doubt about the fact that they did it. As a parent, could you stand behind your kid if they did such a thing?
Stand behind my kid and let them know that I still love them, yes. But try and stop any movement toward punishment, no. I would fully support that there needs to be punishment, and if that punishment includes prison, then so be it. Because with my children especially, I always press upon them that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Everything has repercussions, be they positive or negative repercussions. That being the case, yes, I could stand behind them and let them know that they are still loved, but they're going to have to sleep in their bed now that they made it.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with Ig on this, because you are not doing your kid any sort of favor by trying to get them out of any kind of trouble that they've gotten themselves into. And I do agree that you can still love your kid and support them with love, but they made their bed and they do have to lie in it. And these girls did that, and they're just going to have to deal with it. They don't deserve to, have anybody trying to get them out of this.
Well, it turns out that Morgan's dad is schizophrenic, and Morgan also inherited it from him. She's diagnosed with schizophrenia, even though it doesn't come out till later in life. So at the end of the day, Ryan, where does the blame for these Slenderman crimes or assaults or even killings go?
It's so tough to place blame. Any parent, you can second guess any. There's so many things that don't happen that if it did happen, you can second guess your own choices. So it's hard to place the blame on the parents. The kids, obviously, there are mental health issues. So yes, obviously they committed the crime, so the blame is placed on them. But there are issues there. So it's one of those things that I'm sure there were signs, and I'm sure that the parents could have taken action sooner to maybe get the care. Maybe partially blame is on the teachers. Maybe their own teachers could have identified something and sent them to the right counselor, or requested the parents send them to psychotherapy or to the right type of mental health professional. So it's like hindsight's 20/20. In a situation like this, it's just difficult to really assign blame to any one person. I think it's kind of spread apart everywhere. I mean, they're young. You can blame the internet. You can blame a lot. I think it's like an amalgam of things that you can kind of together. It kind of creates this kind of perfect murder or situation.
How about you, Jules? Where do we throw the Slenderman assaults, killings, murders? Where does the blame go?
This sort of reminds me of the whole Columbine thing, when people were starting to blame, music and video games and, what's all the reasons. And it turned out, the one kid had, I believe they had diagnosed him as a psychopath when it was all said and done. Many doctors had read his diaries or whatever. The other one was a depressed, bipolar disorder. But they had gotten in trouble, and they had many signs leading up to this. So it is mental health, and you can blame whoever you want. But I agree with Kate. If you have like backstory of issues, this sort of stuff just sort of exacerbates that problem even further. And as far as these parents go, they knew there was a high likelihood that this girl could have schizophrenia. That's something. And there was like signs, like weird signs, like the lack of empathy and all that all of a sudden made sense that they should have been working to have that handled a long time ago. She had weird Barbie dolls and weird things happening. They were completely dismissing things they should have clearly stopped immediately and sought help for. So this is definitely a mental health thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I personally, and this isn't an attack on people with mental health conditions, I don't know if I would have children knowing that I could pass that on to my kids. I think that mental illness is directly to blame, and possibly a loner that has been bullied that would probably go along with anything to keep a friend. I have some problems with the documentary. I mean, I was looking forward to more of and I know that there was multiple stories involved in this, but I was looking for more of a deep dive into this polarizing internet phenomenon. And really what we were sold was a second-rate making a murder. I really only rated a 6, and that was more, the story was okay, not very compelling. Visually, I thought the Slenderman clips were great, and I loved some of the fan art and some of the fan movies. So I can't give it any more than a 5 or a 6. How about you, Kate?
I'm gonna have to go with a 7 again, because I think that I think it was very compelling. It really hit all of my markers of things that could interest me, so I was very interested. It reminded me of just a documentary like that I've seen 1,000 times, where it just almost looks like it was homemade. But I mean, I'm used to that kind of thing. It didn't really bother me all that much. I didn't think it was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But I think the actual content was interesting enough to make me go for 7.
Yeah, I'm going to go and say 7 also. I found it to be not at all what I thought it was going to be, much like you. I thought it was definitely going to, delve into the history of different sort of urban legends of, mainly focusing on Slenderman, and it turned into a sort of story that made me question everything I've ever done in my parenting. But with that said, I found it to be compelling, and I actually did enjoy watching it. So I'm going to go with a 7.
I give it like a 5.5 or 6. I think it did, like you mentioned, it was trying to do two things, which is tell the story of this attempted murder, but also give some background and context as in the history of like Slenderman. And it did a mediocre job to me of both things. Like there was so much more of this Slenderman and creepypasta that it could have, that it could have delved into, but at the same time, it's trying to tell you the story of the attempted murder. And that just, I don't know, it came across as exploitative. I don't know if it was because it was kids or the way that they edited it, but just something about it just didn't feel right. I wasn't really connected to it. And again, I wanted to know more about the Slenderman and just how maybe more about the psychology of it. How does this stick with people? Why is it such a phenomenon? But they didn't really do a good job, to me, of really presenting that. So, like I said, I would give it like a 5.5, a 6. The other thing is, recently, there've been some amazing documentaries. As we've mentioned, Make Me Murderer. A couple days before, I had watched another great documentary, The 13th, and so I've seen some really awesome, excellent, well done documentaries. So then seeing this in comparison, especially just for me, I was like, all right, it's not too compelling, but it was pretty compelling subject matter, but I just think they weren't able to hit the mark with it. So 5.5.
Well, I would give it a 5.5, and there's a number of reasons. One being, I think that they moved too quickly through the Slenderman stuff. They didn't really teach us the importance of why that was a thing. I think that they spent too much time with these girls, and is it me, or does every interrogation room have the poorest video cameras they could ever have? I mean, the quality of the video in the interrogation rooms was abysmal. I would think in 2014, I mean, the cameras aren't that expensive. Put a better camera in there especially if you're going to use this for evidence in a courtroom. That being said, all the problems I had with it, especially the things that actually happened with these kids, I'm going to have to give it a 5.5. So there you go. Cinik Radio Podcast. Beware the Slender Man on HBO. You can find it right now on demand. That's a 6.0 from the Cinik Radio Podcast. Stay tuned. Really is coming up.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen. You'll get it. My really this week goes out to none other than Governor Christie. Recently, he just gave a press conference about addiction and how it impacts society, and even going as far as talking about a close friend and a fellow law student who'd lost everything just because his doctor started him down the road of addiction with Percocet. For once, I agree with his message. Addiction is not a criminal justice problem, but a full-blown health crisis. From heroin to Vicodin, we need to start treating these people with rehab and not incarceration. But the really of the story is, Mr. Christie, you've been governor since 2010. Why has it taken you so long to finally show your human side? So do you, Governor Christie? Really?
Really for this week goes to the owners of Strata Plan LMS 4025. It's a building council in Vancouver, British Columbia, who are blocking the lease of a restaurant named Moby Dick. Their claim is that Moby Dick is an offensive term. So obviously these people do not understand context, because a fish and chips restaurant on a harbor named after a classic novel about a whale should not bring imagery of dicks and should not appear to be offensive. So to the owners of Strata Plan LMS 4025, really?
Really for me this week goes out to Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider, our favorite guy from Deuce Bigalow, who's probably upset they aren't making Deuce Bigalow Sub-Saharan Gigolo, decided this week that he was going to go ahead and send out a tweet to Representative John Lewis. He said, "Representative Lewis, you're a great person, but Dr. King didn't give in to his anger or hurt. That is how he accomplished and won civil rights." Maybe explaining the holiday and Martin Luther King's tactics to a renowned civil rights leader and U.S. representative who fought for civil rights from Selma to Montgomery isn't the best idea. Rob Schneider, maybe you ought to spend more time saying you can do it in Adam Sandler movies than trying to explain civil rights to a civil rights activist. So, Rob Schneider, really?
Hey guys, my really this week is for the rioters. Yes, the rioters, not the protesters that were at the inauguration of our 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I totally understand that this has been a very divisive election year, and depending on the side that you're on, it could be depressing and frustrating, or you could feel vindicated and elated. The emotions are extremely manic on both sides, but we cannot go out destroying public property to try to prove a point. Because what point are you really making? That you can get arrested? That you're so mad you're okay with destroying a Starbucks? Which in itself is irony, because Starbucks and Wells Fargo actually backed Hillary Clinton. So there's a bit of shooting yourself in the foot there. But beyond that, when you riot, it takes away from the purpose of the protest and what you're protesting for. The media doesn't care what that story is. The media wants sensationalism. And if you hand it to them on a silver platter, when you start destroying things to get your point, that's all they're going to cover. I remember towards the end of the election, there was a saying being floated around a lot: when they go low, we go high. So let's not forget this vital message, because when you act out in criminal behavior, it only negates all the good that you're actually doing and what you're protesting. And it's the only thing that's going to get covered in the media. And the message that you're protesting is going to fall to the wayside. So to all those rioters, really?
And that's going to do it for episode 16 of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrahi. With me, as always, has been my co-host, Cinik. Joining us this week has been Julie, with earrings that most people could hula hoop with. Kate, who's been a real trooper, running on 27 hours no sleep, but still wanted to come on the show. And Ryan George from the Gymwits Podcast. You can find him over at thegymwits.com. Send us your comments, questions, concerns, and any birthday money coming to you soon to cinicradio@gmail.com, cinicradio.com. Find us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinicradio, and find us on Twitter at cinicradio. It's been a joy talking to you this week. We'll be back next week with something new and exciting. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cinicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.